Hello, everybody. My talk is titled The Way to the Rainy Mountains. The title is not mine, it's mutuated from a book by a Native American author named Scott Mamady, The Way to the Rainy Mountain. Rainy Mountain is a place in Oklahoma and is the home where a native man returns after many years among the white men. The Way to the Rainy Mountains is an inspirational title because it reminds me on the poetry of Adindan and the other Otaiba and Dosiri heroes recorded and magnificently translated by Marcel Kurpashok, on which basis I am building my corpus of Bedouin semantic networks for metaphors. Why I'm interested in metaphors? Because I was once interested in space. I'm still interested in space and time. And when we make prepositions, we do a metaphorical transfer. Okay, so I focus my talk on semantic networks of natural metaphors in Najdi poetry with comparisons from other Bedouin varieties. As I told, I was interested in space, in language and cognition, in Bedouin Arabic varieties. Space is a semantic field, and I noticed that across different Bedouin languages, we can notice as a kind of spatial cognitive core, okay, in the cognitive bedrock of embodied experience that enables us to get oriented and to memorize places. For example, I noticed that all Bedouin varieties, all Bedouin cultures share a strongly similar, strongly oriented toward the cardinal directions, cognitive system, okay, but different languages behave differently with respect to creating prepositions, for example. And when we speak about space and spatial language with respect to spatial cognition, cognition is mental activity, non-linguistic mental activity, okay? And language is linguistic activity. So when we think about space in language, we have metaphorical transfers, okay? Metaphorical transfers means that from widget, which is the face, I do widget el moye, the face of the water, the horizontal surface, okay, is widget, for example, in the Negev. This is a metaphorical transfer. So I am interested in metaphorical transfers from nature, from concrete experience, embodied experience, to abstract concepts. Space is, spatial relations are abstract, temporal relations are more abstract, causal relations are more abstract, and feelings and emotions, like in poetry, are also abstract, but are based on nature, because all the Bedouin cultures base their expression of feelings on natural elements, a little bit like the haiku that we find in Japan, but to different extents and in different ways, as we will see. Some conceptual cognitive experiences are still shared across all Bedouin varieties, like, for example, we find both in Adindan, in the poetry of Adindan, which is one of the poets recorded by Kurpashok among the Dosiri or the Wasir, and also in Palestine, and also in the Bedouinized dialects of the Southern Galilee, for example, we find something like the rain of the night is wetter than the other rain, the rain that falls during the day, for example. The cloudy, the stormy, the rainy night that is prayed for in the poetry of Adindan remains in a cognitive, old, ancestral, primeval cognitive background that is shared in the Bedouin experience that I find also in the space, because when I see that cardinal directions are the basic cognitive bedrock of all Bedouin groups, and that also all Bedouin are very sensitive. Also with Al-Shehri and Bonemeyer, now I am cooperating to watch what happens among the Bedouins in the Hijaz. I see that they are also very sensitive to alignment of things in space. And they encode it grammatically. And I am now publishing a book on this, on the importance of alignment in discriminating between prepositions in the Negev, for example, among the Asane. And also, all the Bedouin are very sensitive to the shape of the objects, to which category something belongs. Is a horse, or is a tree, or is a stone, or is a woman or man? Because if it's a human being, and if it's a horse, it has a face, Giddem, it's usable. But if it's not, then you have to resort to other kind of descriptions, of prepositions. So I see that there is an ancestral bedrock of experience of shared cognition, but languages developed in different ways, because languages first develops and then shapes cognition, if it does. Okay, this is not true for all languages, this is what I assume. Anyway, metaphorical transfer from nature to feelings and emotions. Feelings and emotions are described through nature, as we said. This is true in the language of the poetry of the women, translated by Abu Lughod, and it's true among the Adindan, and it's true also in the Sinai, and it's true also in the Proverbs. Not only in the poetry, also in the Proverbs. So we will cross a bit also the traditional genres to catch the parameters of development of semantic networks. We have cognitive semantic networks, and we have linguistic semantic networks. And metaphorical networks, of course, of concepts that are all related in the same metaphor. For example, in the poetry of Adindan, this is a very evident in the ascent of the mountain peak. It goes up and creates. The poet goes up and creates. This is the inspiration. Inspiration comes with clouds, with heavy clouds. But there are some limitations to these metaphors, to these transfers, because there are universal concepts and culture-specific traits also in the implementation of semantic networks. And how does it work in Bedouin languages? We will see that there are some shared functions. I base my research in the corpus of Korpershok, the magnificent work of Korpershok on Duwasir and Otaiba, the Najdi poetry. The Duwasir are in the Saudi Arabia. You see here it's a bigger La Mecca and Al-Kunfuda, and here you have eastwards Wadia Duwasir. Duwasir, it's a different pattern from the neck, okay, which is this place that are marked with a red dot, and this is the face of Adindan. Adindan, this is the one who can create, who can rhythmate the verse. Adindan is an onomatopoeic word. Okay, I base my research, my work on natural language processing network implementation model. The semantic network implementation model represents the semantic relations between concepts as a net, which is dynamic, because it can be extended. And how much does it extend? And which are the limits of this extension, for example? Metaphor semantic networks serve primarily to organize and to store in memory concepts, and memory is a huge part of traditional poetry. We have memory and we have creation. Memory is the collective. Creation is the individual identity, which is in the Nasiv, in the first part of the poetry that we will analyze today. We will take the individual, the most individual part of the composition and see how recursive is the structure itself of this first part of the poem. The art of memory, the mnemotechnique, was very relevant also in the antiquity. Of course, the oral poetry is transmitted employing complex networks of recursive metaphors that convey connected concepts so that you can remember over many verses. And also, of course, they can get implemented. And how do they get implemented? And which are the limitations, okay? Oral poetry, low individual, high collective components. So it's very nice because it gives you a collective identity. And it's very good for a socio-structural study. Collective cultural constraints. And the level of arbitrariness is very low because if I have to speak for an audience, I have to speak within a culture. And sometimes I pray, sometimes it's not me who speaks, but God, or even the stones, the mountain itself, as in Adindan. So we have a physical experience, which is the foundation of the representation. Why? Because it enables to be understood in a better way. But we have some limitations. For example, in English, cold, chilly ice is lack of emotions. No, it's not. I can say she's like ice and she's like snow. Which one works? The first do, the second don't. They're the first cluster of words. In the Najdi poetry, for example, we have rain and storm. Rain is joy, is relief. It's relief. It's like giving birth. And storm is inspiration. Storm is not related to rain. No way. Storm is related to the mountain top, to the ascent to the mountaintop, to strong wind, and to clouds. And clouds are not related to rain. Clouds are related to creation because they are heavy. Okay, the creation is like to get in an unbearable tension. Okay, and then to break free of these emotions. All of these things work because of the partiality of metaphor, which is has been studied by Lakoff and Johnson. Cognitive networks connecting physical experience are part to exploited metaphorical transfer. And of course, we have different landscapes in different Bedouin languages. And this is, of course, part of the picture that we have to take into consideration when we go from the shared background, cognitive background, to the languages, to the different languages and different experiences. For example, in the language of the Negev, the east are the mountains because they are in the Negev. Toward the mountains, the ascent toward the mountains is going toward the east, for example. No? If we go back to our primitive spatial tools, which are less complex than, of course, poetry, and we can better understand. So, okay, source of metaphorical transfer is nature, of course, but we also see that, for example, in different cultures, like in the poems collected by Zili, we see that tears are related to rain, which is never the case among the Adindan. In Adindan, the rain is only joy for the agriculture. It's not teardrops. And also, for example, in the poems of the women collected by Lila Bulohod, we also see that I am floated by emotions, and they use and it's the same verb of the flow of the wadi, but it's not the case in the poetry of Adindan. So here we have different semantic networks, linguistic networks, okay, but of course we will see similar cognitive backgrounds. We have, for example, okay, these are methodological things that I have to to skip now because of time constraint. We have the inspiration, which is one idea. It's the ascent to the mountain peak, which is specific for the Adindan poetry, not for the Adindan, for the Dosiri and for the Najdi poetry, not only for Adindan. Nothing is personal. Okay, I see. I put here some references from Musil and Ibn Raddas and Sowayan also. And sadness is the dried pit, and loss is the young camel, the calf left behind. These three scenes are present in the first all across the Najd, the second and the third all across Bedouin languages. So they are shared cognitive metaphors related to the connection of a scene, of a routine scene with feelings and emotions, but they can be expressed by different clusters of words, by different clusters of synonymic words. So we have a cognitive background, and we have different words that can represent, in the same language, that can represent the same scene. For example, okay, now this is an example of the partition of the Nasib. We have the ascent of the peak, isolation, solitude, individuality, pain, effort, the clouds and the rain. The clouds are in between the solitude, the individuality, the fertility of the poet, and the rain. But the rain is a blessing. So there is a prayer for the rain. It's not directly connected with the clouds and with the ascent of the peak. Only in one case there is a conceptual short circuit between tears, feelings, and rains, straight. It appears clearly in the translation. In the original, it's still more connected to clouds than to rains. There is infinity of words for cloudy weather and rainy clouds. Okay, different words, same meaning. These are the different expressions. You see, also Sowayan refers to this critically, okay, to this different semantic networks, synonyms for the same metaphorical conceptual network. Okay, for example, to climb Ardab, Riga, Bida, Sharraf, Nat, Tal, Adda, and the peak is Regime, Naif, Mashraf, Margab, Mirjab, which is Mirgab, but in this case Mirjab. Yes, we are in the Najd. Hayya, Mashtur, and also Khushm, Khashem in the Najd, Khushm in the Negev. But of course, in the Negev, Khushm exists, but it's not related to the composition. Okay, it's not exploited in poetical composition. It's not a poetic topic. Which are the limitations of the metaphoric network implementation? Where do I stop doing metaphors and connecting them? Where do I stop as a dindan or a poet? The limitations are dictated by the verse, by the consonants, assonance, and rime. The sound effects are very, very constraining, of course, on the level of the language, not on the level of cognition. On the level of cognition, you have the same scene, but on the level of the language, you can represent the same scene in different ways. Constrained by the sound effects. So sound effects constrain language, and language reshape cognitions. Okay, I have to stop here because these are my 20 minutes. I think I have some more seconds. You can look at this. This I want to say that the proverbs are an important part of the traditional composition, and also proverbs are based on rime, on assonance and consonants that shape semantic networks in the end. And then we have, of course, for the topic of the rain in different Bedouin cultures. For example, in Sinai and the Negev, we have different types of rains that are expression of different types of feelings according to the season, and whatever is connected to the same season, including stars and animals and activities, are connected to the same metaphorical network. I'm sorry for being too short, and this is some literature for you. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.